Joseph Stalin was the leader and the dictator of the Soviet Union. He ruled with an iron fist, his name whispered in fear across continents. Entire families vanished behind barbed wire. But behind the cold marble busts and the stern portraits was a man who also had children. Sons and a daughter who bore his name, carried his blood, and struggled in their own ways to live under a shadow taller than any monument. The first child of Joseph Stalin was Yakov, born in 1907 to Joseph Stalin and his first wife, Kato Svanidze, in a small Georgian village. But Kato died of illness, leaving Yakov motherless. Stalin had no time to raise a child. Revolution was calling, and Yakov was left to grow up under the care of relatives in Georgia. It wasn't until he was 14 that he finally moved to Moscow to live closer to his father. Yakov tried to earn his father's respect. He enrolled in artillery school. Yakov was too soft, too gentle, too willing to show pain. Everything Stalin despised. At 18, he married a 16-year-old classmate, Zoya Gunina. Stalin was furious. Zoya was the daughter of an Orthodox priest. Stalin was strongly opposed to this marriage. After another insult from his father, Yakov shot himself in the chest, but survived. Stalin did not visit him in the hospital. Instead, he found a reason to mock him. Stalin forced the marriage to end. Not long after, Yakov's heart turned to another scandal, a married Jewish ballerina named Yulia Meltzer. Their love caused whispers, arguments, even threats. This marriage was not approved by Stalin, but Yakov didn't care. They had a daughter, Galina. She became Stalin's beloved granddaughter, despite his complicated relationship with Yakov. Galina was a philologist. Then the war came. On June 24, 1941, Yakov left for the front. His farewell with Stalin was painfully short. "Go fight," his father said, nothing more. A month later, Yakov was captured by the Germans. The Nazis quickly realized who they had. They plastered his image on propaganda leaflets, broadcast recordings of his interrogations over loudspeakers, trying to crush Soviet morale with the voice of Stalin's own son. The Nazis offered Stalin a trade, Yakov for Field Marshal Paulus. Stalin coldly refused. He told them, "I will not exchange a soldier for a general." In 1943, Yakov died in Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Some say he threw himself on the electric fence. Some say he was shot trying to escape. Either way, it was his final, tragic attempt to break free from barbed wire, from the burden of his name, and maybe from a father who never truly claimed him. Vasily was born in the Kremlin itself in 1921, Stalin's son by his second wife, Nadezhda Alliluyeva. His childhood began under the high ceilings of Kremlin apartments, surrounded by tutors and guards. But when Vasily was just 11, his mother took her own life. Without her, Vasily grew wild. He started smoking and drinking early. Moscow buzzed with stories of his drinking binges and countless affairs. He raced cars through Red Square, drank until dawn, collected mistresses like trophies. Yet under the bravado was a scared boy, desperate for his father's approval. Stalin thought of him as soft-willed and spoiled, but he didn't interfere. Yet even with this reckless spirit, Vasily fell hard for flying. He threw himself into aviation school. During World War II, he flew 27 combat missions, reportedly shooting down up to 5 enemy planes. Vasily Stalin was married 4 times. His life was a chain of passions, scandals, and drama. His first wife, Galina Burdonskaya, was the daughter of an engineer from the Kremlin garage. But even his son's wedding failed to move the heart of the leader. Stalin didn't come. They had 2 children. Alexander became a theater director. Nadezhda studied acting but was expelled. Galina eventually left, unable to bear the drinking, infidelity, and constant fights. After the breakup, Vasily forbade her from seeing the children. Only after his death was Galina able to rebuild her connection with them. Vasily's second wife was Ekaterina Timoshenko, a translator and the daughter of a Soviet marshal. Stalin was against it again, but Vasily didn't listen. He drank, cheated, and after the divorce, Ekaterina disappeared from his life forever. Their children's fates turned out to be tragic. Their son struggled with addiction and took his own life. Their daughter died in her 40s after a severe mental breakdown. Vasily climbed the ranks quickly, became a general by his late 20s. Some whispered it was only his surname that kept him afloat. Still, Stalin proudly pinned medals on his chest, even as he ignored Vasily's downward spiral. At a fishing party, drunk on power and vodka, he ordered rockets fired into a pond to stun the fish. The blast killed an engineer, gravely wounded a pilot, and cost Vasily his command. Somehow, not long after, he was promoted again, the privileges of a name. His third wife was Kapitolina Vasilyeva, a 19-time swimming champion of the USSR. Vasily forced her to quit sports, and yet she forgave him. But their relationship remained heavy and painful. After Stalin's death in 1953, Vasily's world collapsed. The Soviet elite closed ranks, and the Stalin children lost their shield. At the funeral, drunk and raging with paranoia, Vasily shouted that his father had been poisoned, accusing Khrushchev and his circle of murder. The new leadership didn't take kindly to such outbursts. 2 months later, he was arrested for anti-Soviet talk. He emerged in 1960. In the hospital, Vasily met his third wife, Maria Newsberg, a nurse. Many biographers suspected she might have been a KGB agent. During their marriage, Vasily Stalin's health rapidly declined. 2 years later, he died. The official cause, alcohol poisoning. He was only 40. Witnesses claimed that Maria regularly gave him injections, explaining them as sleeping medicine. Svetlana was Stalin's only daughter, born in 1926 to Nadezhda Alliluyeva. She was 5 years younger than her brother Vasily, and the apple of her father's eye. He adored her, called her Little Sparrow, smothered her in affection she didn't always understand. He spoiled her shamelessly, letting her do almost anything. At 16, Svetlana fell for Alexei Kapler, a married film actor nearly twice her age. Kapler was arrested, charged with espionage for Britain, and sent to the brutal camps of Vorkuta for 5 years. After the war, Svetlana tried to build her life outside her father's shadow. She studied philology. She married 5 times, searching for something. Maybe tenderness, maybe escape. In her first marriage to Grigory Morozov, a doctor of law, Svetlana gave birth to a son, Iosif. Stalin disapproved of the union. Iosif became a well-known cardiologist and a doctor of medical sciences. Later, Svetlana married the scientist Yuri Zhdanov, almost without courtship. It was more of a marriage arranged by Stalin. They had a daughter, Yekaterina, who later became a volcanologist. After the divorce, Svetlana had several other marriages and affairs with prominent figures from Soviet culture and dissident circles, relationships that profoundly shaped her worldview and her life. Stalin hated most of her husbands. In 1966, she traveled to India to return the ashes of her third husband. From there, she made a shocking move, asking the Americans for political asylum. Stalin's daughter defected, landing in the US to a storm of press fascination. Suddenly, Stalin's daughter was on American television, denouncing his legacy, publishing memoirs, living under an alias in small American towns. 2 years later, she published memoirs that laid bare her childhood in the Kremlin and tried to exorcise the ghosts of her father. In those pages, she blamed much on Beria, hoping to convince the world that Stalin's monstrous legacy did not entirely belong to him. In America, Svetlana searched once more for happiness. She married an architect, William Wesley Peters, and gave birth to a daughter. After the divorce, Svetlana took the pseudonym Lana Peters. In 1984, she returned to the Soviet Union. The state welcomed her with propaganda fanfare, restoring her citizenship overnight. Yet in her own words, she never felt free. Not in America, not in the Soviet Union. After a brief attempt to settle in Georgia, she fled back to the US, living out her last decades in quiet isolation. She called herself a political prisoner of Stalin. She died in 2011 in a Wisconsin nursing home, complicated, restless, never quite sure if she was running from her father or from herself. Stalin's official children were just part of the story. There were others, rumored, whispered about in secret police reports, sometimes confirmed decades later by DNA tests. Konstantin Kuzakov, born in 1911, was likely Stalin's son by Maria Kuzakova during his Siberian exile. He became a Soviet cultural official, kept his lineage private for decades, terrified of what claiming Stalin could bring. After the USSR fell, he cautiously admitted the truth. Then there was Alexander Davidov, born in 1914 from Stalin's affair with Lydia Pereprigina. He lived quietly, had children who became scientists and engineers. And there was Artem Sergeyev, not by blood, but by adoption, the son of Stalin's close friend, who died in an explosion, raised inside the Stalin household as one of their own. Artem grew up to be a general, a loyal Soviet. Few of Stalin's descendants sought the spotlight. Maybe they understood better than anyone that fame under this particular surname could be more of a curse than a crown. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment on who you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching.